Hey guys, welcome to the International Coaches Roundtable podcast. This week, we are going to be hearing from co-hosts Brooke and Niha as they speak with our special guest, Mounia. Mounia is a wellness coach who focuses in on balance and how important it is to strike a balance so that you aren't swinging from one extreme to the other and instead living from your center. All right, if that sounds like what you need, find somewhere comfy to sit, and we'll see you at the table.
Hi, welcome to International Coaches Roundtable podcast. My name is Niha. I am a life and law of attraction coach. And today I'm here with my co-host Brooke and an amazing wellness coach, Mounia. Well, just to remind you guys that our mission is to empower our listeners with the tools and insights they need to unleash their full potential. So once again, we are here for an incredible conversation. Now, let me just pass it on to Brooke, who would let us know more about today's episode.
Thanks, Niha. Hi, everyone. I'm Brooke, a certified life and self-love coach, and I'm so excited to be here as part of the ICR. So today we have Mounia. Now, she is a wellness coach, and we are so excited to have this conversation with her because we hear so much about wellness these days, what it means, what it doesn't. So she is here to tell us more about it.
Hi, Niha. Hi, Brooke. Hi to the audience. I'm so glad to be here today. Thank you for having me. So I'm a Canadian wellness life coach from Montreal. And I think it's so important for people to better understand the definition of wellness and also balance. So it's finding balance in wellness and understanding that it has many different components. And it's like a journey in understanding and knowing what you like and what you love. Because what I come to understand with a lot of my clients is that we're often doing what we have to do and not enough of what we want to do. And that's where the balance comes in. So if you're doing everything you have to do, but not doing enough of what you love to do, that's where you're actually not feeling fulfilled. So I'm really excited to talk about all that today.
Yeah, that is something I really agree with that most of the times we are just doing something because we have to do, and we are clueless that what is that we truly want to. And I'm sure me and Brooke can very well understand being a self-love coach. So we know how important it is to do what you want to do. But then I'm really intrigued to know that when you say wellness coach, the first thing that comes to my mind is health and fitness. And I'm sure that, most of the times that's how people understand. So would you just help us to understand that, what exactly you do and how can we just leverage out of this conversation today?
Absolutely. So if you Google wellness, the first thing that's going to come out is going to be a fitness coach.
Yeah.
Okay. And it is super important to have sports, to have fitness included in your daily life, walking if you can't do some intense sports. But it's not only about that. And then we hear everything about eating, our eating habits. Are we eating healthy? Are we being careful with our sugar consumption? Are we hydrated enough? So that is super important too. But there are many other aspects in the wellness. And if Brooke can bring out, there's an image that really well explains all the levels of wellness. And most people will put a lot of emphasis, like we said, on everything that's training and eating, but they're going to kind of forget the other ones. And then they're going to be feeling like there's something missing.
So Mounia, let me just pop up another question that, when you go ahead and when you talk about, balancing life and, just having a fine balance. So when it comes to, and that's what wellness is defined as. So any particular example that you would like to give so that our listeners can understand it better?
Absolutely. So as I am a woman, I'm going to use the example of a woman. So as a mother, as an employee, as a daughter, as a partner, as a friend, as a sibling. So we all have these relationships with other people where we need to take care of them or create basically relationships and connections. what happens is that we often put a lot of energy in doing things that we have to structure our day or to structure our week. And we kind of get caught in the autopilot. Okay, so we're doing everything that's planned out because we want to be organized. And often we hear, I don't have time. And when you look back and you're like, okay, you don't have time because you have to take care of many obligations, or you need to care or take care of other people. What are you doing for yourself? And a lot of people will switch from doing everything for everybody else to doing everything from themselves and kind of pulling themselves out of connection, which is another mistake that a lot of people make. So they're going to both extremes. They're either giving everything to everybody and not filling up their own cup, or they get to a place where they're exhausted and then they only start taking care of themselves. What's important to understand is balance. Once again, we need connection. Okay, we do need to do things for ourselves. We do need to take care of ourselves, but we also need connection in order to be able to feel balanced, because everybody wants the same thing. We want to be seen, we want to be heard, and we want to feel safe. So how can you be seen and how can you be heard and how can you feel safe if your only emphasis is on yourself and you're only focusing on yourself? So this is something that I often see when we talk about wellness and self-care. People are going to cocoon themselves into I'm going to be taking care of me, and they kind of disconnect from everybody else.
That's such an interesting point. And as you say, it's so much about connection, because we go one of two extremes. It's all about everybody else and nothing for us, or all about us and nothing for anybody else. So you mentioned balance, which is just such a fascinating topic. How do you help people get balance, and how do you help them reach that happy medium?
So first of all, I do an exercise with them that's called the passion test. Okay, and in this passion test, what we do is we take about 30 values and we kind of exchange where the person needs to make a choice between two. And it's a very interesting exercise because when they start, they're in their conscious mind. So they're going to answer very quickly. And then we go back until we identify 5 of them. And towards the middle, we start seeing them shift into their subconscious mind, and their conscious mind isn't controlling their answers anymore. And that's where they define what their 5 primary values are. And from there, they understand, because they're going to give a percentage to each one of them, and they're going to realize which ones are very low and which ones are very high. And then together, we kind of decide which ones they're going to be working on in priority. And I'm always fascinated because 80% of the time, the clients are not aware that their values are the ones that we end up with. And I always ask them, if I were to have asked you this question before you did the test, do you think that these would be here? And do you think that they would be in this order? And most of them tell me not at all. So that's where balance comes in, because there's an inner combat between what we think we should have as values and what are really our values. And I'm going to give an example for myself, because when I did it, I was sure that family would be on top of my list. So at the beginning, I was always saying family, family, family. And then slowly towards the middle, my family went down. And then I finished with freedom. Freedom was my first one. But when I went into the exercise, there was no way my conscious mind was taking me all the way to family, because that's what I was taught. That's what I knew. That was what I had seen as a child. That's what my family showed me. That was the most important component. That was the most important value. But that wasn't me. So that's where you kind of find balance between what you should and what you really do feel.
Yeah, that's such a great point, isn't it? Because it comes down to conditioning as well and what we're conditioned. And we so often lose sight of what is ours and what we've been taught and conditioned to believe. So, with that, and when you work with people and you find their 5 values, how do you then work with them to bring that into their life? So, once you've identified it, what's the next step?
First thing, I ask them which ones they want to work on. So it's not because they're at 20% or 30% for one of the values or the first one on the list that they're automatically going to want to work on that one. So we look at them together. We quote them basically on 100, how much percent are you at? And then I let them decide which ones they want to work on. Once they define which ones they want to work on, then I give them exercises every week, because I usually work with my clients once a week. And then they leave with that, and then they slowly try to bring it up.
Mm-hmm.
So every time we meet, we talk about what happened, what experiences, because that's the beautiful thing about the work, is that during that time where we're not working together, the universe, life is going to send them situations, and then they're going to be like, oh, okay. And then there's a shift. So they come back the week after, and when we talk about it, they're like, this is really funny. This happened to me this week. And I would usually react this way, but I didn't this time. And I realized that I felt really comfortable not doing what I usually do.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of it, because it slowly shifts when you're conscious of what you really desire and you know where you're going. And you're not on like an automatic pilot where, what did you do today? And sometimes people don't even remember what they did.
Right.
Because they're so conditioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So another thing, like I'm sure many of our listeners would really try to understand it in a deeper way after listening to this episode. However, I'm sure many of us would also be trying to just go ahead and do some self-work, because it's not easy for each one of us to reach to the coach directly and speak about, their limiting beliefs or their imbalance in life. So any tips for our listeners that they can just do a self-test kind of at home and just figure it out in themselves, that do they really need to understand what is that they want and what is that they're doing?
100%. So the first thing is to be in tune with what we say. Okay, so the power of our words. For example, if you're having a conversation with somebody and they're telling you, I have to, I must, right away, we're in the obligations.
Right.
When a person speaks to you and tells you, I'm excited, I can't wait to, I'm intrigued, I love, you see that it's something that they're passionate about and there's something that they love and enjoy doing. So when a person is communicating, they just have to listen to what they're saying. If the words we're saying are I must and I have and I don't have time, then they're in the obligations. And therefore, probably there's no balance. When they're listening to themselves and they're saying, I'm looking forward, I want to, I would like to, then they're in their what they want to do. So it's this very simple exercise to listen to what you're saying and to listen to what other people are saying. So recently I had an experience with someone that is not a client, but the person kept telling me, I don't have time. I don't have time. So everything was justified by the fact that they didn't have time. And then, we went on with our conversation, and then I realized that they did have time, but they chose not to have time. So it's like if it was a mechanism that they developed to justify the fact that they were not doing things.
Yeah.
Because when you sit back and you look at their day and they describe their day, they have time.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So, how I understand it, it's like more like identifying yourself as someone which you are not. Like many times we say, oh, I can't read books, I'm a bad driver, I am horrible at this. So it's like, it's a limiting belief, right?
Absolutely. I can't, I'm really not good at this, I don't want to. these are blockages that we have and that we are basically trying to keep ourselves in a safe place. Because if I don't try something new, then I can't fail.
Yeah.
And if I don't fail, then nobody's going to judge me. And the first person that judges us usually is ourselves. So if I don't have motivation and I'm not inspired, then I won't be doing anything. And if I don't do anything, then I won't fail.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
it's
very
so
beautiful.
true. And this is where self-sabotage comes in as well, isn't it? Because we know what we want to do sometimes, but we stop ourselves from doing it because, as you said, it's the fear of failure, the fear of judgment, the fear of rejection, and that all comes into play as well. So how do you work with your clients, and what do you recommend in dealing when how to deal with those things when they come up, to get past that and actually do what it is that you're passionate about and what you want to do?
So usually what I do is, let's say they say, I would love to learn English, but I can't. So then I would ask them, why can't you? Oh, because it's so complicated. Why is it so complicated? Well, I didn't go to an English school. So they start finding all the reasons why. And then I ask them, okay, what language would you like to learn? And then they tell me, I would like to learn Spanish and I would like to learn Italian. Great. So why don't you do that? Well, because it's not really going to be useful for me. I really need English. Okay, so I let that go. Then they have an exercise to do. So I send it to them in English, not because I'm doing it in purpose, because I have the exercise in English. So I send them the exercise in English and I specify, really sorry about that. I only have it in English. I hope you don't mind. And then the person's like, no, I don't mind at all. Thank you. That's great. It's going to help me practice my English.
Yeah.
So we went from somebody that couldn't and gave me all the reasons why they couldn't to, okay, let's forget about English. Let's, put the emphasis on a language that you are interested in learning. They identify the two. And then I say to them, okay, so why don't you enroll in an online class? No, you know what? Really, I don't need it. Okay. And then I send them something to see if they're going to be open, and they're 100% open to it. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that I didn't come up to them and tell them, well, we're going to be working on your English right now, and this is how it's going to work. I presented to them something that I only had in English. They weren't in their fear when I sent it to them. They weren't in the emotion of fear and trying to justify every reason why they weren't going to take the English course. So they received it.
Yeah. So as like most of the times, many of my clients, they also face this challenge that, oh, I'm at a certain age and I have been functioning in this way since last 40 years, 50 years. And I have this fear of driving or maybe talking to strangers or meeting new people. And I understand this is more like a block which I have created, but then changing myself at this age is next to impossible. So what would you like to suggest to such clients?
So I hear that all the time. That's actually one of the most common ones. I'm too old.
Yeah.
Okay. And I always tell them that we're never too old to do anything. So it's difficult, when there's a difference of age between me and my client. When I'm telling them this, the first thing they do is they're on the defense mechanism and saying, yeah, but we're not the same age. You're still young, and then I bring them back to what are you taking away from your life by not doing this? So they know that they have a fear. They know that they have a blockage. And most of the time they know exactly where it's coming from. So it's to make them kind of get out of that fear and look at what are they losing by not being able to face and to fix this situation. Once they understand that what they're lacking is superior to what they're gaining, and once there's a confidence that's built between me and them, that's where they kind of have the curiosity to, okay, I will try this.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it does come down to the feel the fear but do it anyway, because when you look at what you would gain compared to what you would lose if you didn't do it, it's like, well, you got to go for it, you've got to make it happen. So there's going to be fear with everything, but it's about deciding whether you're happy to just feel the fear and actually move through it, or if you're happy to just stay comfortable. So
Absolutely.
so how do you get people over that line of, okay, you're feeling the fear, let's get over it? How do you get people to living balance?
So let's look at the example that Niha gave us of somebody that's afraid to drive. So let's say it's a grandparent and they're afraid to drive and they would like to see their grandchildren more often, but their children are working all the time. So when they realize that if they were to work on that fear, that would give them the opportunity to go see their grandchildren more often, that usually is enough for them to be like, okay, I'm going to take the leap of faith.
Right.
So often what you need to do is you need to identify something that's super important to the person that they're depriving themselves from, and show them that by doing this, you will be able to spend more time, for example, with your grandchildren, and you just see it in their face. They just light up and they have the motivation because, first of all, the love that they have for their grandchildren is superior to the fear that they have of whatever the reason is they don't want to get into that car.
Yeah. So recently I heard this term that, confidence is the outcome of your courage. So if you just look at it, it's like, usually we say, I do not have confidence to do this. So basically, you're not talking about confidence, you're talking about courage. You do not have enough curiosity, like Mounia said, or courage to do that. And the moment you do that, the outcome would be your confidence. So I think now I'm able to relate these two things, what she explained, that, you need to develop that curiosity and courage to just take that leap of faith and go ahead with it. So yeah, it's like, just do it.
Absolutely. And most of the time, what's keeping people stuck is the fear of making a mistake and being judged for it. So many of my clients tell me, I want to, but I can't. And then when we start talking and digging, I realize that it's because they're afraid to disappoint their spouse. They're afraid to disappoint their children. They're afraid to disappoint their boss.
Right.
So it's always about the fear of disappointment. And this is programmed probably from their childhood, where they probably had this situation with one of their parents.
Right. Yeah.
So what I work as well with them is to shift the fear into faith, and to shift the victim into the victor. So most often when we're stuck in a situation and we're afraid of change, we're going to use fear to keep us there, and we're going to use the victim to stay there. It's to help them become from fear to faith and from victim to victor.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Very good point. So we just need to start wrapping up now, but it's been such a fascinating conversation. And something that we would like to ask you is, what is it that you would like to leave people with? So what is one piece of advice to take away from this?
I would want to share with our audience that we've come to a time with COVID and with the stress and the obligations and everything that's there right now, self-development, self-awareness. It could be very consuming, and we often feel confused, and there's a lot of information. I would suggest that you really go inside of you and start listening to the signs that are there. Our intuition and our body are our best friends. And we always know if something's off because our body is going to tell us in one way or another. And that's a very important tool that I think that we have with us all the time, but that we do not use. So it's just to pull back in any situation and listen to what our body's telling us. And from there, try to understand the message that it's trying to send us and find what's good for us. So self-care, listening to music, taking a bath, taking a walk, calling a friend, saying no. A lot of people have so much trouble saying no. So it's just to step back, listen to your body, because our body is the only tool that is always with us. Always, no matter where we are. And get in tuned with that and find out what we like and what we dislike and how we can find a certain balance between what we need to do and what we want to do.
Right. Yeah. That was beautiful. I think that reminds me of this thing when you said that, a lot of people, it's challenging for them to say no. And it's like, if no sounds like freedom, it is the right thing to do. So
100%, Niha. Thank you so much.
yeah, pleasure. Great. And thank you so much, Mounia, for giving us this beautiful insight about balancing our life and making us understand what exactly wellness means. So, but just a quick question, what made you come to ICR and, and just come up with such beautiful conversation today? What have you known about ICR so far?
So I have a colleague of mine that told me about your platform. I had done a podcast before. I loved the experience. And I said to myself, let's do this. Let's help each other as coaches. Let's see what different knowledge, what different experiences that we have. Let's be a community. Let's share and let's grow.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Mounia. It's been such a brilliant conversation and we've absolutely loved having you on the podcast. So thank you. Just to all of our listeners, if you have resonated with anything that any of us have said, please get in touch with us. We will be linked in the show notes. Also, please do listen and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify, and we are also on Instagram. So please go and follow us there and get in touch. And we cannot wait to speak with you next week.
All right, guys, that's it for this week's episode. We are so glad that you decided to spend a little bit of time with us, and hopefully you walked away with as much as we did from this conversation. If something that Mounia said struck a chord, or you want to know a little bit more about working with her or learning from her, go ahead and check the show notes. All of her information will be in there. You can also head to our social media platforms to find more. And while you're there, go ahead, like, subscribe, and follow. And don't forget to leave a 5-star review. That helps us out a lot. Thanks, guys, and we will see you next week.